that the needs and perspectives of the entire community are represented by encouraging women to take on leadership role and participate in decision making. We foster a more balanced and effective governance system ultimately entire tribe. This involvement is essential not only for promoting equality but also for preserving diversity. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Jaya ma'am to share her insights on this important topic. Over to you, Jaya ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Shweta. Thank you. That was a lovely introduction. And thank you to JKM College, Shrikantan sir. Today morning when you talked, I was a little nervous because this is special. Special because this particular theme that I am talking about, uh, I'm talking about my research which talks about Jharkhand, talks about tribal self-governance and development, and to be able to and to be able to present here to the students in Jharkhand is very, very special. So thank you so much. Thank you, Anu, for reaching out. Thank you. I'll just take a minute to share my screen so that my lecture remains structured throughout. Okay, just give me a minute. Yes. Can you see the screen? Is it
Yes.
visible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. While we talk about development, my major idea here is with regard to women's participation and not particularly with regard to women's development, how women's participation would not only strengthen self-governance, and specifically in this case of tribal self-governance, but also with regard to the ideas of development. So my presentation has these three parts in the as content. So first we will very briefly we will try to understand the idea of development, what tribal self-governance is and how do I connect self-governance with development, and the third part, which is the major part of the presentation, which is women's participation in self-governance and what are the challenges, all of that. And this would include examples from my field work because I had a lot of experiences with regard to, although my thesis does not particularly talk about women, but yes, there were certain issues which I would want to talk about and would take up as my further research, and therefore I would want to talk about women's participation and how does it strengthen self-governance, how does it grants weightage to these to the idea of development. Okay, so very briefly, when we try to understand development and when we see that how the idea of development evolved, so this is a term which is not a new concept, but a very old one. And now development was, when you go to in the Darwinian sense, development was used interchangeably with evolution and survival of the fittest and everything. But the way we understand development today, in relation to underdevelopment, this idea actually developed after the Second World War. And when you read the presidential address of Harry Truman in 1949, you would find that Harry Truman actually talks about development. He actually presents this relationship between development and underdevelopment, and he understands, and that particular speech kind of builds this relationship between development and underdevelopment. The development, therefore, this idea of development, therefore, was used as a term was a term which was used by the colonials, by the colonial governments, and was given a positive meaning that it would uplift those who they categorized as backward or underdeveloped. So therefore, we see that in the present context, and specifically after Second World War, we see that the idea of development was written, was majorly with regard to economic development and increasing per capita income, production of material goods, and aspiration of development. And with this primary aspiration of development, we also see that everyone was following this linear trajectory where it was ancient, medieval, and modern, and modernity meant development. Okay, so very rightly written by Dipesh Chakrabarti, that to be developed is equivalent to being modern. Even David Tucker talks about it, how development became linear to modernization, and modernization meant development, and development of technology, infrastructural development, and all of that. So development, not only economic growth, it was industrialization, urbanization, infrastructural development. All of these ideas came together and formed this definition of development. Now, what happened as a result of this? That there were two things that happened. One, advancement through goods and technology. So those societies, those states which did not have these technologies were categorized as underdeveloped. And the other was the production of structures of power and ideology. So those who are underdeveloped have to be dependent. So this power structure of being powerful and being less powerful, requiring development, or the progress has not happened. So this structures of power, this hegemony also increased. So these were the two processes which were the result of development. Now, we don't see these processes only in the case of states, but we also see this process within the state boundaries as well, where we see these divisions based on, so somebody having access to modern technology being more modern, developed than those not possessing that. Okay, so now let's come to the idea of tribal self-governance. Although I will not give a lot of weightage to this part, but I will just briefly talk about how tribal self-governance, as we understand and as we see PESA as the project of to ensure tribal self-governance itself, kind of took this idea, although it had a very important clause in it, which was the customary rights. Okay, and this idea of customary rights is also there in the fifth schedule. It was believed that once the tribal communities as well are able to or are able to be mainstreamed is when they would develop. Okay, so when you look at the schemes of development that are being introduced, they also take a very mainstream ideas of economic growth as part of development. So the development schemes as well talk about it. However, what I argued in my thesis as well was that every community has a knowledge repository. So with regard to ideas of development as well, tribal communities or Adivasis we call them Adivasis, and Adivasis identify themselves as Adivasis, and there have been arguments there. They have rejected this idea of tribes. This is for the next time, but yes, the idea of Adivasi or the term Adivasi have been used by these communities to identify with a collective struggle. And here they have formulated these ideas, or they have these ideas of development, which very much is inclusive of their their own knowledge systems, their customary knowledge systems, their community knowledge systems. And as part of that, we have also because you are living in Jharkhand and you have been experiencing these ideas around you. So the ideas of Jal Jangal Zameen, I am sure you would have heard. This is an idea of development for the indigenous, for the Adivasis. So the Adivasi idea of development, therefore, was also critique against the modern Western idea of development. They critiqued in the sense that the development that has been done by the state, or the idea of development that the state comes up with, is a mainstream idea. And more than being an idea of development, it is more, it is destructive and not constructive. Okay, so when we talk about development, tribals or the Adivasis have mostly talked about how they would need power to decide the use of their resources, because one of the important philosophies that these different communities have, is to not use more than, or not produce more than what is required. Collective living is something that the tribal communities have held very dear to. Okay. However, we see that the mainstream ideas of development are not only introduced, but have also been imposed, in the sense that we see lots of development projects coming in Jharkhand, dams being built, infrastructural projects being built. One of the very good examples that I could see during my research, and I was in the villages of Dumka, was that in the villages now these local communities, tribal communities, already have a system of waste management. They know how to manage their waste, so you will find extremely clean villages. They are clean villages. And there you would find that there are big, in the name of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, because in other places, in cities, you see big dustbins being installed. So in the villages as well, you would find these dustbins. Now, these dustbins were empty. One would know that these dustbins are empty. If you throw something inside the dustbin, it will make a huge noise. Okay, so these dustbins were empty. So the government, so what I'm trying to tell you here, that instead of trying to understand what these communities need, the government took a very universal idea of what development is. How do we understand development? And implemented it everywhere. Okay, so how we understand, how in the cities we need these dustbins, we need a proper drainage system. While there it was not required, maybe the dustbins were not required, because there is a minimum use of plastic, and whatever organic waste is created, there's already a waste management system. There's already a waste management system that's already there. Instead, what was required there was, and it was not available, was the primary health center. The only infrastructure existed. There was a primary health center, but there was no doctor, there was no Asha Didis, there was no medicines, there were no injections. So the people had to, for any health service, they had to go to the nearest town, which was the Dumka town. And it was a 2 hours journey or a 1 hour journey at least. So if there is an emergency, they could not access any health services. So this is how I was trying to understand how, when we talk about customary rights, this is a good provision. However, the the participation of the tribals should be enhanced in order to develop according to them. So development would never reach the people if there is no people's participation. Now, when we talk about people's participation, yes, Panchayati Raj is the answer to it. And with 73rd Amendment, we see constitutional Panchayati Raj given constitutional status. However, this was not applied to the fifth schedule areas, and it was much later applied in 1996 with PESA. So now PESA was trying to do it, but again, it followed the same philosophy, a similar philosophy that was prevalent in the general Panchayati Raj. So the argument basically is to if tribal self-governance needs to be ensured, people have to participate. Now there is a problem here with regard to gender as well, in the sense that when we talk about the tribals, we again miss out the point that uh, it cannot be taken as a homogeneous concept. So these gender, just a minute, these plural identities within the community is not taken into account while when we see the tribal laws. This is a major problem with the state laws. When we talk about when the state takes up the cause of tribals, when they try to implement tribal laws or schemes, they take up a very homogeneous idea of who the tribals are, who the Adivasis are. Here, I would like to kind of intervene with the one of the identities that we have is that of women, and a very popular argument that we see when we talk about women is that tribal women are more empowered than the other caste women or or women in other communities. This is a very popular argument. However, there is a problem with this argument, and this has been highlighted as well, that when we talk about this, when we compare the tribal women with other women of other communities, yes, they are empowered. Yes, they enjoy decision making power in the community. They also enjoy much powers with regard to working out in the fields they are working. And however, when you look at the status of women inside the tribal community, the picture is completely different, because even the tribal communities are patriarchal in nature. Major rights being enjoyed by the men. Now, this is a very important statistics that's there, and 50% reservation for women was guaranteed by the Jharkhand Panchayati Raj Act 2010, and in 2011 we see that the 55% of seats are being won by women in the PRI's body. However, now what the reservations did was reservation allowed participation of women. However, participation of women or getting elected does not ensure their representation. Did not ensure and does not ensure their representation. Women's knowledge, when we talk about development, the ideas of development is very closely related to knowledge as well. Now, when we look at women's knowledge, most of the time we see that the knowledge that the women's have or women own with regard to with regard to environmental conservation, or with regard to, again, environmental conservation with regard to water or natural resources also, with regard to environment, you would see that women hold great amount of knowledge. However, these knowledge systems are not considered, um, or they are not taken into account, right? One is that. The other thing is, yes, the status of women that we talked about. So there is a problem with customary laws as well, in sense that when you look at the Gram Sabhas in the present context, and when I was in the field, so I did visit some of the Gram Sabhas, you would see that there were a lot of women in the Gram Sabha. So if you are going from outside, you would see that, oh, there are a lot of women in Gram Sabha. They are very active. They are participating. However, the real picture is that the women are there in the Gram Sabha because there are no men. The men have gone out to the nearby towns and the nearby states, maybe nearby towns and states, for labor. Okay. So they are employed as labor and they have gone there. So there is no man in the village. And therefore, in the Gram Sabha, you would find a lot of women. Okay. So, and when we talk about, however, the Sarpanch still remains, or the Maji, the village head, still remains the man. So this, and again, with regard to financial powers, they cannot own property. They only have, the customary laws only provide them with what we call usufruct rights, which is the right to use. So till death, they can use the property, but they cannot own the property. And when they cannot own the property, they cannot transfer it as well. They do not have the decision-making power. So when you don't own the property, there is no decision-making power. So that is also a major limitation with regard to women being empowered. Yeah, so, okay. So also when we are, how much time is it? Can Shweta, how much more time do I have?
You can take 10 minutes more.
10
Uh,
minutes.
oh, okay. Oh, that's a lot of time. I think I would be able to finish it before that as well. Okay, so yeah, so there is, because of that, we also see that there is limited access to education, the choice of profession. Now, one of the major difficulties here with tribal self-governance also is that people are, people are more comfortable with their mother tongues. However, because now, the Panchayati Raj is functioning as per the official language, and people do not have access to education in villages, uh, and most of the times education in mother tongue do not happen, and Panchayati Raj is functioning in the state's official language. Therefore, there is a gap here where women also cannot participate in self-governance. So even though they are elected, in order to function, either they need to be educated specifically in the official language, or they need to depend on someone else. Okay. And this happens with regard to, so even if you have a women sarpanch, she cannot function because of this barrier that we have. And this can be the case with the village head, the customary village head, who are not educated. So this is also one of the problems one of the challenges that we see. With women also, so there was one village which had a women maji. Now this happened because her husband died, and her children kind of said that no, we want her as the Maji, and we will not give it to some other man in the family. So this happened, and therefore this woman became the uh, Maji for the village. However, the problem here was because she did not know anything, and because she was not having this decision making role ever, she did not have it. Therefore, the decisions for her or the decisions for the village that was supposed to be taken by her were being taken by the other male members in the family. Uh, and most of the times it happened that these maybe they were not the decisions that she wanted. They can be a completely different decision that she would want to take. Now, another major problem here also comes with regard to domestic tasks. They are also supposed to, now women, if women are given some leadership roles, it does not mean that they will be exempted from the domestic task. So domestic tasks, professional obligations, both of them become important for her, and they have to balance it. And one of the cases, so one of the women who was elected as the sarpanch, so she was elected as sarpanch, and so when I went to talk to her and I wanted to understand how PESA functions and what are the things and all of that, she refused to talk to me, and I had to convince her, please, this is something that I've come from JNU and all of that, and I kept on convincing her that at least she speaks up something. And the only thing that she said was, my husband is not at home right now, and I will talk to you once he comes back. So even women, so maybe there's a term that Chattopadhyay and Duflo in their work in 2003 use, which is proxy women. So it's very much a possibility where this woman is working as a proxy, and the main task is being done by the men. So and she would not speak up in the absence of the husband. She is obviously not someone who is taking decisions and taking decisions for the family. Also, the support for women is a little, now that we have reservations, then people support women that yes, you should, because that gives them a chance to be in the limelight. They give the husband or the, if she's supported by some political party, to have a chance. However, the major decisions are still being taken by the men. Another thing that you would see that now within tribal communities also, you would see that some people, some population are have gained. Some are still in the villages living in kacha houses, but some of them economically they have progressed, and you would see that the people had this complaint that although she is our sarpanch, but she lives in the town. She does not even know what are the problems that we are facing. The whole family lives in the town, and she does not know what our problems are. So even though this woman is coming from the tribal community, she cannot be, in the practical sense, be said that yes, she is from the tribal community, but because she is not aware of the problems that people are facing. Okay, so yeah, so this is also something that that came out during my study. So the bottom line, therefore, or I would like to conclude it as that only representation is not sufficient, and there has to be a mechanism where people are able to participate in this in the decision making process, and specifically when we talk about tribal self governance. Because self governance here is not just management of resources. Self governance is also important, and decision making with regard to uh, the management of resources, the management of the village, and everything. So, self governance must include participation of the people, people's participation, instead of just representation and for the namesake reserving these. So, reservations is not bad, reservations is good in the sense that it does allow women to come forward, but the state, the community, all of them needs to rethink and overthink over these issues. State, when coming up with laws, must ensure that these laws are according to the people. People participate when they are people are able to participate in actual sense when there is when we talk about their development. People are able to participate, and they're not, and we are able to, or the state is able to ensure development according to the people. Yeah, so I think this is what majorly I wanted to argue. And through so when we talk about participation, it's not just representation, but also participation in the real sense, where people are given the right to choose, the right of choice, the right to make decisions. And what are there in the laws is the right of consultation, and it should not be the right to consultation. There should be a right to consent, and not in only the literal sense, but in the real sense, the right to consent. um, so yeah, this is it, and I think I can take questions if you have any.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, for your enlightening and thought provoking insights. Your words have indeed opened our eyes to the significance of this topic. Now, I also would like to open the floor for any further discussions or questions from the students.
Yes, okay.
Anyone want to ask?
uh yes, I can see your hand, Bonita ma'am, but I cannot hear you.
Um, well, I'm not a student really.
Okay.
I'm a retired professor, but I found your talk to be very interesting. I joined in
Thank you.
because of my interest in tribal studies, and I wanted to know um, what kind of new research is coming out of the different universities. Um, Ms. Jaya, yes, you
Hmm.
have given us a very strong kind of observation regarding the participation of women. But what I really want to know a little bit more is the passion with which you defended tribal modernity vis-a-vis the mainstream notion of modernity that is not being followed through, um, as I find in your discussion, because you have clearly castigated the modern notions of modernity and development, and you have put in an alternative that tribals are, yes, not homogeneous category, but they do have a knowledge system and they do have other kinds of means through which they can. You have left that unsaid, but we deduce from that that you mean that they can have a system of modernity all of their own. However, you conclude with something which is again paradoxical. You come to the point that because the mainstream method, you're reducing that. Your mainstream method of modernity has not come about. The right kind of education, participation of women, etc., has not occurred, and hence there is lack of consent, there is lack of absolute kind of participation in the way
Mhm.
modernity allows.
Yes.
So, isn't this a paradoxical argument? I would be more interested in knowing from your field research what are the alternatives you found out, perhaps which are hidden,
Mhm.
perhaps which have not come to the limelight yet, because women are scared, perhaps women do not have a proper collective voice, and because of lack of education, they don't know how to put it across. But yet, these are powerful tools of, shall we say, slash modernity, alternative methods of modernity, which will allow the tribal populace, especially the women, to develop their secret kinds of knowledge, their knowledge systems, which can be tools of alternating of the mainstream modernity which you are denouncing.
Okay.
I mean, if you had kind of given a little bit more, I'm sure you have these things in your field work,
Mhm.
but you
Mhm.
didn't want to bring them out. So I'll
Mhm.
be interested in knowing
Mhm.
these kinds of alternative things which are there, which can be brought up as alternative methods of modernity, vis-a-vis the mainstream line of modernity, which you have castigated in the beginning. Okay, I hope you get my very
Yes.
lens kind of an observation. Yes.
Uh, how do I answer? Do I can take more questions, uh,
You can
or
respond to
I,
the question. Yeah,
oh,
you
okay,
can take,
okay.
yeah.
Then I will respond to Bonita, ma'am. Uh, Ma'am, yes. So, with regard to alternative methods of modernity, I would argue that uh, one of the great things that I could find, and this was prevalent throughout my field study, was that women come together very easily. They'll come together very easily. Although in the field you would one would not find the state very much active in implementing policies, but you find a lot of NGOs working there, and women come together very easily as a community, and they bring the other women. So that idea, or um, that idea of community that is so dear to the tribal community actually comes from the women who, and in the field, whenever I could go to I could or I was a witness to so many programs where women were coming together and they were working together. They were very easily able to listen to each other. So obviously they have this skill to kind of listen to each other's problem and then go ahead with the solutions. It's just that something, and which can be education, which can be where they are not given a chance, or these and specifically education where they do not understand maybe the official language, so therefore they are not able to take these leadership roles very actively. But yes, when and I believe that they have this capability, the ability to come together and kind of have this idea of collectiveness, have this idea of community, which is very important. And yeah, so this is one of the things that I could, notice. And again, the waste management system that I was talking about, that itself can be called as being modern, where the cities which are said to be so developed are still struggling with waste management. They are struggling to keep the cities clean. They are struggling they're struggling during the rains. They are struggling. While when you look at these villages, and when you go to these villages, you would see that everything is so well managed. And this mechanism of waste management that we see there itself can be, so you would not, so these were the Santhal villages, and there it was my experience, and yes, there is always a limitation to the study, but that was my experience. I did not find an open drainage system inside the village. There was not. And obviously waste does gets created when people are living. Waste does get created, but obviously there would have been a waste management system that that would have been there, because of which these villages were so clean and beautiful. Okay, so yeah, so this is one of the alternative mechanism that I could see. And yeah, so I hope I answered your question. I don't know if I could satisfy you, or maybe.
It's okay. Thank you. Thank you. If we had more time, we could have talked more because of my deep interest in this.
Sure.
However, I'm sure there are others who want to talk, but yeah, some other time.
Good evening, ma'am. I have a question.
Yes.
I'm Monica Mato. How to increase women's participation in development? What should we thought about in this? Now in many societies, women do not have freedom, especially village areas. People thought women meant to be do only housewives.
Okay. Yeah, so how do we increase women's participation? A question that many of us are struggling with, how women can be included and how can they participate, is one I would say is education. Yes, and it's not just a universal standardized kind of education, but now with regard to tribal communities also, so we need to value the education system, we need to value the knowledge system, and every society or every surrounding that we live in has its own demands. So if a woman, or if a person, not a woman, but if any person is living in a village and they are the community is dependent on the natural environment, their culture or their society, all of that is being or all of that is in that surrounding, then it is also believed, or it should be the case that they are aware, they are educated in that sense. So therefore, when we talk about education, one thing that always is talked about is education in mother tongue. Now, mother tongue cannot be just used as a medium of instruction. It's not just that this should be translated into your mother tongue, but even the education should come from the experiences of the local surroundings. Okay, and which also does not completely negate the education that we are getting already. That it's not completely negating that, but including these knowledge systems, including these knowledge system, giving value to these knowledge systems from the cultures that we are coming from the community that we are coming from. So a person who is living in one of these villages should be they should be educated. Definitely they should be educated in their mother tongue. And also these now PRI becomes a state organization. These state institutions also must value this, uh, and the processes that happen in these PRIs should be in the local language of the village. There should be a mechanism where it is bilingual. Okay, so maybe that would that would ensure that more women participate. And yeah, so that could be one mechanism through which they can. So it's very important that we value the knowledge systems. We kind of understand the pluralistic idea, or the pluralistic ideas of knowledge. That knowledge is not the standardized universal education in a standardized language. It's not.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello.
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 Yes.
Yeah, Jaya, what I feel is that along with that girl's question, you can also refer to the Kerala experience, particularly in terms of women's participation in
Okay.
terms of developmental activities. And I would like to invite your attention to our system, what's called a mechanism, what's called a Kudumbashree. Under
Yes.
Kudumbashree, there are more than 3 lakh neighborhood units. And these 3 lakh neighborhood units are right now engaged in economic activities, which is more than a corporate in the state. So the economic foundation of these 3 lakh neighborhood units are very strong. They are very much engaged in brisk economic transactions. And there are educated people, uneducated people, and SCs, STs, etc., etc. And the most interesting part is in the last local self-government election, these ladies contested, and a good number of people are right now representing the local self-government bodies and taking part in the decision-making process. So this is a ongoing process. And when you are economically empowered, you could when you are in a position to take economic decisions, and then you deal with transactions, calculations, money. You don't listen to your husband,
Yes.
right? And your immediate objective or interest is commitment to the community. It's the unit. So
Yes.
then only you can have a social phase. So it is from the very same phase you are just going to the local self-government. There also you take very decisive political decisions. So this is the way how the Kerala is showing the track of women's empowerment. Now I am relating the same thing to in the form of a question. You right from the very beginning, you just told that the central schemes are not active in the context of tribal belt. So my concern is, see, look at the NREP and all those mechanisms. Then how, if those systems cannot properly function in the tribal belt or the region like that, is there any indigenous system which can counter to this type of central programs, just like equivalent to Kudumbashree, something like that? That's my question.
Okay. Yeah. So they can, but sir, I did not find this particular aspect. But yes, I could. The thing that I did find was, yes, there was a possibility, because for example, so I was there during the time of the Women's Day celebration, and yes, the women did come together and they did celebrate together. So yes, there are possibilities that or there are possibilities where something a similar project like Kudumshri would function. And I was actually not referring to the a criticism with regard to state's policy, but I was actually referring to the kind of implementation that happens, in the sense that these maybe these policies are also not resonating with the people, since these policies are also very distanced from the ideas that or that would actually ensure their participation, or the developmental projects that are being implemented in the tribal belt are very mainstream. And maybe so for example, if this is also the area, the belt, where mining happens a lot. Now with mining, the thing is that people don't want that mining. Now that impacts the environment. However, this mining is important for economic growth, and therefore that's happening. And yeah, so that was my questions, or my the issues that I was dealing with was something related to this, where people's participation also could not happen, because the developmental the idea of development that the state comes up with is a very mainstream idea of economic growth and increasing GDP and all of that. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Some hands are up again.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes. Yes, I could hear someone speaking, but
Yes, ma'am.
yes.
I am Swati Divedi. Presently, I am doing my B.Ed from Srinath College of Education, which is in Jamshedpur, Adityapur. My question is, in present scenario, we all are seeing that women's safety is a challenge. So in this situation, how can a woman empower herself?
Okay. Now that remains again a question that does not have one answer, or does not have a very uh, precise answer. That, but yeah, if we are looking for women empowerment, and if we are talking about women empowerment, empowerment would first of all, uh, one of the first things that empowerment would ensure is to be able to make decisions, and one of them would be to be able to make decisions, make financial decisions, make decisions for yourself. So decision making becomes very important when we talk about um, empowerment.
Yes, ma'am. Suppose someone is making decision in a right way,
Mhm.
but what are the steps should we follow to
Mhm.
empower ourselves, to empower the society?
Yeah, shall I interfere?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, see, sorry to interfere. And see, your safety will be okay, and your freedom will be right, your security will be right, provided that you live in a democratic setup. If you are not living in a democratic system or a proxy democracy, this type of things may come. So the question is, what is democracy? Democracy means we have to be, in all sense, as per the constitution says, we have to be free from fear, right? We have to be enjoying freedom, and also we have to see that others' freedom is we are not infringing with. So when we think collectively like that, normally this will be an ideal society. Unfortunately, we are not living in that much sense, such a democratic society. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. You
So
are
so
totally
so
right.
so, so we have to go further heights for being democratic, and we confine ourselves to our house and want security. No, it's not possible. We have to interfere. We have to be social. We have to be collective.
Yeah.
And Jaya was referring to the collective identity and also the cultural unity of the tribals. So they don't feel that this type of things means security issues they're not feeling. But it is the concern right now in the metros.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
metro peoples are also not safe. Tribal
Yeah,
group are
yeah,
there actually
yeah,
not
yeah.
aware about.
That's what I'm telling. Because tribals are enjoying the ancient type of democratic system, and they
Yeah.
have that system. Okay, fine.
Okay, ma'am. Is there anything else from your side?
Um, no, I think I have. And yes, the ideas of democracy. Yes, I could remember. Okay, this completely, I think I missed. Thank you, sir, to referring to this, the ideas of democracy, and what a participative democracy would mean are the things that and when we talk about democracy, actually, one of the very important things that in the Gram Sabha that I could witness and I could notice was that the decisions in the Gram Sabha was taken with consensus. Hmm. However, the modern democracies usually depend on the majority vote. There it was consensus. So it wasn't about if the might is right or the majority is right. That was not the idea. But everybody was being given a chance to at least speak for themselves what they wanted and how they wanted. So, however, again, this can be a limitation of any study that one of the biggest limitations with my study was one, I was a woman, and you're traveling alone, you're a woman, you're going around in the village. So people were very concerned, and
Yes.
definitely
It's a
that
major
was one
issue.
limitation. And the other limitation that I faced during my study was the language barrier. That was also one of the limitations that I faced. So even though I had a local person with me, but much of the things and many of the things are lost in the process of translation. So yes, so the study definitely had limitations, but yeah, so largely this was, and these were the experiences that I wanted to share, and it was lovely to have the questions and the discussions.
Okay, ma'am. One more question is from my side. In the slides, it is mentioned about PESA. What is that? Can you please
Oh, okay.
elaborate?
So PESA is actually Panchayat's extension to the scheduled areas. So when Panchayati Raj Act was implemented and it received the constitutional status, it was implemented universally in all the states. It was not implemented in the tribal areas because they all come under fifth schedule. They are protected under fifth schedule and the sixth schedule. So the general Panchayati Raj did not come or was not implemented in the general areas. It was believed that development can only be ensured, and specifically in the fifth schedule areas, what happened was that tribals only had their local governance, the padhas and pargana and these local governance system. And at the state level, they had something called Tribes Advisory Council, which in the true sense cannot be called as representative. It was a very centralized kind of an organization which did not enjoy much practical functions. Okay. So the limitation here was that so in order for the people to participate, and this gap between the government and the people, in order to bridge the gap, it was realized that we also need to have a system. So PESA was therefore introduced. However, it was the Bhuria Committee report after which PESA was implemented. However, when you look at this report, it actually talks about the 4-tier system, which was later made into a 3-tier system. This 4-tier system that Bhuria Committee report was suggesting was, in a sense, with the idea that the state institutions would reach the village, and people's participation can also be ensured through the 4th or the lowest tier, which would be completely the local governance system that the tribal communities practice, and which is a traditional practice, and it has been it has been going on for generations. So this is Panchayat's extension to the Scheduled Areas Act. It was implemented it has to be technically be implemented within 1 year of formation of Jharkhand. And for other tribal states, other states which were in the 5th schedule area, they had to implement the act within 1 year of coming of the act. So in other states, it was since 97, and in Jharkhand, it came in 2001, but it's argued that it was not implemented in a real sense. Still, people believe that it's not being implemented in the real sense, and. But yeah, so there have been amendments. There were the recent amendment 2010. There's an amendment which actually talks about 50% reservation of women. So yes, so this
Okay.
was.
Is there any educational needs also connected with PESA for our tribal groups?
Educational needs, yes, educational needs where people need to be aware of these bodies and how these bodies must function. So, for example, there is one provision where if any project needs to be implemented, it has to be passed by the Gram Sabha, and Gram Sabha is the people's assembly. So the people of the village are part of the Gram Sabha. It has to be passed by the Gram Sabha. However, there have also been practices where the actual Gram Sabha never takes place, and there are some middlemen, you would say, who go to house and collect signatures. So
Okay.
the actual discussion never took place, but but that project was passed because there were some middlemen from the community who went house to house and collected signatures. So yeah.
Okay, ma'am. It's a request from you. Our Srinath College of Education principal, ma'am, has also raised her hand. Please
Oh
have
yeah.
a conversation with her.
Okay, sure. I don't know. Is it Atya Parveen?
No, she's Rachna Rashmi.
Rachna Rashmi. Okay, yes, ma'am. Please ask your question. I can only see Lovely Bittu, Atya Parveen, both of them raising hands. Rachna, ma'am, if you can hear me.
He's gone, it seems.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes, Atya
My
Parveen. Yes.
yes, ma'am. Ma'am, my question is, what are
Mhm.
the impact of urbanization and industrialization on tribal self-governance and their cultural identity?
Mm, okay, on their cultural identity. So whenever a development project takes place, or with I'm so sorry, the light went away. But with regard to either setting up an industry or a mining project, or let's say dams, building of dams, you see a large part of the land goes into it. Okay, and with that land going away, with or that particular area or the forest area being cleared. Now when your community is dependent, so for example, if your community is dependent on the forest, you have certain cultural practices which are dependent on the forest. So you would find, when you go to these villages, one thing that you would find is the sacred groves. And these sacred groves are uh, now these sacred groves have again one knowledge, one a knowledge that's been attached to these sacred graves are that these sacred graves are constituting of majorly the sal tree, and this is native of the land. And native of the land, it is the plant which is native to this environment, that the environment that we are talking about. So these sacred groves also function because once this area is made the sacred groves, people do not cut these trees, and they would conserve these trees. And in many of the readings, you would also find that how these groves have also been recognized, or are also helping with weather forecasting, right? So it's a conservation method. It's also seen as a conservation method. It has also been interpreted as a conservation method. um, and when the forest gets, so there were a lot of sal trees, and there were the sal jungles in these areas. With these developmental projects being established, these a major destruction that happens is with regard to environment. Okay, so Yeah, and therefore your culture, your community gets affected, your culture gets affected. So yeah, they do. And so yeah, so this is what your people now, tribal communities have they worship the they worship nature. So if these if there is no existence of the nature, you see, the culture also gets affected. There is with destruction of environment, this destruction of jungles, water, there's no water body. People cannot they are displaced to some other surrounding where they cannot find a similar habitat that they were living in. So many of the cultural practices, uh, they also kind of are lost if there is displacement. Many of the social practices are with displacement. Many of the social practices, many of the agricultural practices are destroyed. Your culture this way.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions?
I think no more questions, it seems.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Actually, Jaya, you made a very nice presentation, well constructed, well argued. Nice.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Now,
Yes, we can see Rachna, ma'am. She joined, I believe. Rachna, ma'am, joined right now. Just check.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good
Yes.
evening, sir. Good evening, all of you.
Good
Good
evening,
evening.
ma'am.
Myself, Prashna Rasmi, and I am principal in charge of Srinath College of Education. May I ask question, sir? I am not student.
No, no, everyone can ask question.
Okay. Thank you, sir. In fact, my question is, we know about self-governance. Self-governance is the part of democracy. But my question is, what is the role of a woman in tribal self-governance?
Okay. Role of women in tribal self-governance. Okay. Uh, Ma'am, what are you exactly trying to ask with role of the women, in the sense that how can the participation of women help tribal
Yes,
self?
exactly, exactly.
Okay, fine. So when we talk about tribal self-governance, we should also be careful that tribes is not a homogeneous identity. And when it is not a homogeneous identity, obviously different identities in the community might have different kinds of needs and aspirations. And when we look at it as a homogeneous universal idea, then we must miss out the pluralism that exists. One is that when we talk about tribal self-governance, tribals are seen as a homogeneous identity. Now, the other part is when we talk about women, and when we talk about women, the one major thing with regard to the role of women, or the participation, I would not say role, but the participation of women, is that when a woman participates, she is also it's very similar to how it happens in other cases also, that when a woman participates, she comes up, she I would not say naturally, but yes, she has much different experiences than men. And those experiences, so when they are allowed to participate, they would add to uh, to many of the perspectives, many of the aspects within tribal self-governance. And when we talk about democracy, democracy should be looked at from a very broader sense, where people are able to participate and are able to are able to talk about or include their aspirations, their interests as well. So women participation in that sense, as a category, or I would not say a category, but as a part of the community, becomes very important. Their role become very important within tribal self-governance as well, because they have completely different knowledge system, they have a completely different experience as part of community, they have a very different experience, and they would have a completely different set of aspirations and needs that the tribal self-governance needs to focus on. So yeah, with regard to, so one of the major things would be health. Their needs are completely different. If you look at health, their needs are completely different. So yeah, so those experiences need to be included. And
Thank you, ma'am.
thank you. I hope I satisfied you, or I don't know if my
Of course,
answer
ma'am,
was
of course.
satisfactory.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, as we come to the end of our program, I would now like to invite Miss Atya Praveen, student teacher, semester third, to deliver her vote of thanks. Atya,
Seems Satya has got a question.
Good evening, everyone. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks in front of you all. I, Atya Parveen, student teacher of B.Ed semester 3rd. We have been fortunate to an engaging and insightful session on this webinar on the topic Rethinking Development, Women's Participation and Tribal Self-Governance by our distinguished resource person, Assistant Professor Dr. Jaya Kumari Ma'am. Your thoughts have enlightened our minds and have shown us a new path. We are truly grateful for the time and effort you have dedicated to sharing your expertise with us. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to our principal, Dr. R. Sikantan Nair sir. You played the role of a backbone to us. We all are grateful for the opportunities you create for us to engage in such a meaningful dialogue. My sincere gratitude also goes to our Secretary Sir, Mr. Narayan Prasad, for their selfless service and compassion. A special thanks to our HOD Ma'am, Dr. Mosmi Mahato, for their visionary leadership guidance in making this event grand success. I would also like to express my deep appreciation to our program coordinator, Assistant Professor Anu Misra ma'am. Your tireless efforts in making our program a success. I wish to thank the professor, lecturer and student from other college and community people who join us today. Your active participants have added great value to our discussion and learning experience. I also extend my sincere thanks to the faculty members of JKB8 and JKM College. Your cooperation and involvement have been inspired us. A special thanks also goes to our dedicated volunteers and technical teams who have given their time, dedication, and kindness. I would also like to say that this event would not have been possible without the effort and hard work of each and everyone. At the end, I am thankful all the members who have beautifully added to the glory of this event. Thank you so much and have a great night.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank
ma'am.
you for the opportunity, and I would like to connect again. Thank you so much. Thank you for reaching out, and thanks.
Fine.
Thank
Okay, bye.
Can I leave the meeting?
Yes,